last time round?
Well, the DUP vote is holding up strongly in this election. Diane Dods is already well ahead of what she received at the last election. So we're very happy that things are moving forward, and that it isn't the DUP that's leaking the votes to Jim Allister on this occasion.
Right, actually he took 66,000 votes last time round, but Diane Dods was 87,000 votes down on what Jim Allister had in 2005 when he was your European candidate. So there are lots of numbers that can get very confusing quite quickly, but the point is he took a huge chunk out of Diane Dods' total last time. Yes, and it looks like he may have done the same thing again.
And Diane Dods is already 25,000 up on what she won the last time. So you can hardly portray us, before the votes are finally counted, having 25,000 more as being bad news for the party.
No, but it's a far cry from the days when you were getting 175,000 votes.
And that would indicate that the shredding of the unionist vote has allowed Sinn Féin to top the poll. And we have encouraged people not to engage in that, but people have done it. And that is portraying Sinn Féin as the leading party when actually they're not.
Right, Olba McGuinness, this is not good news for the SDLP, whatever way you look at it, because again, these are not final figures, but if they are correct, they prove to be correct, Alex Attwood was very confident throughout the campaign he could take the third seat. He may now be not in fourth place, but in fifth place.
Well, I'm not sure about that. I mean, I was looking at the figures that I've just received in relation to the SDLP vote at the moment, and that's at 78,000, and I don't see either the UUP or indeed the TUV being higher than that. So it puts the SDLP, I think, in third place. Now, we may not maintain that.
In terms of first preference votes?
Yes, in terms of first preference votes. We may not maintain that position. It's in the lap of the gods, it's in the lap of the electorate, but nonetheless, it's a healthier position than I was in 2009. To be ahead of the Ulster Unionist candidate is a good position. And remember, there's over 40,000 votes from the Alliance Party and the Greens that need to be transferred. Now, that's quite a chunk, and a lot of those votes could go to the SDLP because Alex Attwood would be more transfer friendly than Jim Nicholson, in my belief anyway.
Do you think, would it be your hunch at this stage that the likely outcome is that Jim Nicholson will win, but it's going to be very tight?
I think it'll be very tight. I mean, I would hope that Alex Attwood would shade it, but it's going to be a close run thing.
It was always going to be a close run thing, wasn't it? I mean, we were saying this for quite some time, that the battle for the third seat was very difficult to call. Most people called it for Jim Nicholson, but they always said it was going to be very difficult for him.
Well, of course, we must wait until all of the votes are in before we get too carried away with this. But I think, you know, this will scare both mainstream unionist parties. I think if Jim Nicholson or Jim Allister has done as well as we think, they're obviously the Ulster Unionists are the ones who are most frightened at the moment because they're sweating over their seat. I think the DUP is quite safe, but I also think there's quite a lot for the DUP to mull over as well. But this lurch, apparent as it is, to the right for the unionism, I think that will cause a lot of soul searching within the DUP as well. Already we know they're not taking part in the planned leaders' talks this week, and I think they'll sit down and they'll mull over what it means. And of course we must also say this election probably came at a very, very good time for Jim Allister. There were a lot of things happened which would have he could capitalise on, and which presumably pushed his vote up, and we all know what those were.
Well, could I just say that Jim, that Jim Allister's vote, according to our tally, is around about 11%. Now that may well vary from one count to another, but around about 10%. Now that's what, 6% higher than the local government election, somewhere in that region.
It's down a bit on 2009 where he had 13.7.
It's a very significant vote no matter what way you look at it. And it is great credit to him, obviously, that he gets that particular vote. But it shows the point that we have made all along in this campaign, that this seat for the SDLP was winnable. And I think that whether we win or lose, but particularly if we win in a tight contest, it proves that we were right to say this was winnable and to sell that point on the doorstep.
OK, we just saw pictures there of Simon Hamilton from the DUP and Francie Malloy from Sinn Féin. getting themselves some refreshments at the coffee bar down below us there. And also the photographer Bobby Hanvey, I noticed, who's been running around the Count Centre taking lots of pictures. The rambling man, fine photographer he is.
Yes, very much so.
He's in great evidence down there taking pictures, isn't he, Alban?
Took my picture this morning.
Did he? Yes. Well, he
took yours.
He's still to get me. He asked to come back out and he disappeared, so we'll get that sorted out.
He took a few pictures up in our direction as well. I think he has a photographic collection of just about every cultural figure and politician who's made any impact down the years. Edwin, you're not in that list. You need to get sorted. You need to get on the list. What about that? What about what Alban's just been saying there about how...
I think that there's been a upsurge in unionist turnout, which is a demonstration that unionism is strongest when it uses the ballot box as opposed to protest. And we have had that opportunity. People have come out in their numbers and voted for unionist parties, which has made them stronger in council chambers. And in quite a number of places, seats which were expected to go to Sinn Féin have actually went to various unionist parties.
But is there such a thing, strong but very fragmented and very diverse and very splintered? I mean, is there such a thing as a unionist voice? Jim Allister says he's got the traditional unionist voice. You say you speak for unionism, but the two of you don't agree on very much. Then Mike Nesbitt doesn't agree with you, doesn't agree with Jim Allister. He has a different view on things.
I think the truth is we agree on far more than we disagree on.
Wouldn't think that listening to you a lot of the time, Edwin.
Of course you're competitors, so you generally end up having some argument at some point. But the truth is we agree on far more than we disagree on. And I have to sit back and look at the votes that didn't go to the DUP.
Okay.
And I have to ask myself the question, why did they not go to the DUP? I need to respect those individuals and those people, and I need to try to win those voters back to the DUP, or indeed, if they've never voted for the DUP, to try to encourage them to come into our camp.
Okay.
And that's how I look at these results.
All right, we'll take a little break on our set for a moment or two. Thank you for now, and we'll go back to Tara and hear the latest on the figures and perhaps catch up with some other political opinion down there on the count floor.
Yes, Mark, we're getting through our quota of candidates quite nicely down here. Henry Riley joining me now. What are you hearing about your vote?
Well, we're very, very pleased. It looks as if we'll be between 24,000 to 25,000 votes. We entered this building today with the expectation of 10, judged on our council performance. So now we have 3 representation on 3 of the new super councils and quarter of a 25,000 votes here today. It's a tremendous result for us.
I was asking Nicholas White earlier on about who was voting for you. Is it a Eurosceptic or is it down to your personality? Is it the local area that's voting for you?
Well, within South Down, we were very pleased because doing tallies in those boxes, we were in round 4, over 4,000, and if that transfers to 2016 to the Assembly, we should be in there with an Assembly seat. But in general terms, we're getting right across the spectrum. National people who would be traditionally nationalist voters, mostly unionists in fairness, but right across the whole spectrum, political spectrum, we've been picking up votes. And we do put that down to the Farage bounce. It started in London, it's moved right through the United Kingdom, right up into Wales, Scotland, and now into Northern Ireland. And 5 years ago at the last Euro elections, the SNP said it was totally impossible for UKIP to win a seat in Scotland, and they've done it this year, so anything's possible for us in the next election here.
Obviously this vote will bolster your position, as you say, for the party going into the next elections, but your votes actually, once they're transferred, are going to be crucial here. Where do you think they're going to go?
Well, our tallies, they were fairly evenly distributed between the TUV, Ulster Unionists and DUP, so I don't think we're going to be kingmakers in any sense, but I think they will end up very important. But it does look like a fairly even distribution between the 3 parties, the 3 bigger unionist parties.
Nicholas White, just to bring you in here, we're hearing some horror stories of this going on into tomorrow. What are you hearing?
Certainly it looks like the late tallies have been pulling some of the mid-ranking candidates very closely together, and we're now actually hearing that it's possible that Jim Allister of the TUV may have pulled ahead of Jim Nicholson of the Ulster Unionist Party. And if that's the case, then all of these transfers, not just Henry Riley's transfers but everybody's, are going to be playing a very important role in deciding who actually does take the 3 the third of the 3 European Parliament seats.
So we may get a shock yet.
We may get a shock yet. I can see a scenario where Jim Allister comes 4th, Jim Nicholson comes 5th in first preferences, but manages to pull ahead to take one of the 3 seats from 5th place by getting transfers from the Alliance Party and from others.
If you were a betting man, who would you give the 3rd seat to at this stage?
My wife has forbidden me from betting, and I do everything that she says, Tara.
I'm very glad to hear that. In terms of your predictions then, who do you predict as the 3rd seat?
I think it'll be the status quo. I think that it would be remarkable if there is a perfect storm that blows Jim Nicholson out of the European Parliament. At the same time, perfect storms do sometimes happen.
Okay, Nicholas and Henry, thanks very much indeed. Back to you, Mark.
There you go. Perfect storms sometimes happen. They do. We'll see if this is a perfect storm this time round. Mark Devonport has joined me again. Alban McGuinness and Edwin Poots are still here. By the way, we're on air for the next 11 or 12 minutes until 5:30. There'll then be radio coverage, of course, BBC Newsline. We'll have online coverage, and we'll see how things pan out. We may be back later in the evening, but let's just say it's a movable feast at the moment because, Mark, progress is very slow. Yeah. And the picture, if anything, is becoming more complicated by the minute.
Yes, so you catch me scribbling away here, some figures that just got off the floor there. This confirms, I think, a little bit of what Gareth was already telling you there about the sort of the packed field in the middle of the field, in the sense that the SDLP at the moment are ahead of the Ulster Unionists, and the TUV are sort of chasing down the Ulster Unionists hard. So this is what I've got at the moment in the last few minutes. Sinn Féin's Martina Anderson in the lead with 149,000 votes, or equal to about 25.5% of the vote. The DUP's Diane Dods in second position with 122,000 votes, equal at the moment to just over 21% of the vote. So I think those two we can say home and hosed. Then in terms of the 3rd seat, the SDLP's Alex Atwood on 81,000 votes. That's 14.1% of the vote. The Ulster Unionist Jim Nicholson, 10,000 short of that at the moment on 71,000 votes, 12.4% of the vote. And then just a short distance behind Jim Nicholson, the TUV's Jim Allister, 69,000, 12% of the vote. As a percentage just slightly behind what he was previously. You remember he scored 13.7%, but actually a higher number of votes, and that's because more people are voting this time. Then you've got a bit of a gap. Alliance's Anna Lowe on about 40,000 votes, which is about 7% of the vote. UKIP's Henry Riley with 23,000 votes, about 4% of the vote. The Greens' Ross Brown and Tina Mackenzie at about 9,000 votes each, which is about 1.5% of the vote. And I think the Conservatives have just got about 1,000 votes, which I haven't even worked out what percentage that is. But basically, at the moment, Alex Atwood giving Jim Nicholson a bit of a scare. Potentially, as Gareth was hinting, Jim Allister coming into the mix. Jim Allister might get, I suppose, some transfers from UKIP and Henry Riley. Jim Nicholson might be hopeful of getting some transfers from Alliance, but so will Alex Atwood of the SDLP. He'd be hopeful of getting transfers out of Alliance, the Greens, NI21. Those could split in different ways between the SDLP and the Ulster Unionists, potentially. So at the moment, yeah, it's a fascinating sort of battle there. I still think probably, looking at that array of votes, probably I would still put my money, if I was a betting man, which I'm not, on Jim Nicholson, but it's pretty tight in there.
Is Martina Anderson will presumably have a surplus, will she, ultimately, which will be redistributed, might go towards the SDLP. It's not going to go really to Jim Allister, Jim Nicholson in huge numbers, is it?
If she has a surplus, I don't think it'll be very large. We were told that the quota was going to be somewhere around the 150,000 mark.
Okay. All right, listen, we'll just catch up on the latest developments from Tara, who I think has something of import to report. Tara?
Yes, absolutely. I'm joined now by Jim Allister, the TUV leader. And just tell us, are you going to be the 3rd MEP?
No, I don't think I'm going to be the 3rd MEP, but I'm going to be returned back to Stormont tomorrow with a huge province-wide mandate of something of the order of 75,000 votes, which very much strengthens my voice in demanding the basics of democracy. The right to have an opposition. Is that too much to ask? The right for the people to be able to change their government? Is that too much to ask? The right to vote a party out of government. Of course, the absurd, failing, dysfunctional system we have at Stormont denies all of that. And a large part of this increased mandate for TUV is an upsurge of support for our stance. So I draw great comfort from this result. When I also look at the fact that there's almost 25,000 UKIP votes, there's 100,000 votes of people disaffected from the present mainstream parties who have delivered such failure at Stormont and elsewhere. So it's a very good day for TUV. I'm delighted. And the other very important thing is that the unionist vote is increased. And why is that? Because of the element of choice, so that everyone had some unionist to vote for. And that increased, brought out more people, and therefore they will use their transfers within that system. So far from choice in a PR election shredding the vote, as some tried to scaremonger, it maximises the vote. And this is a good day for unionism in that regard.
You're still only one voice at Stormont, though. You can't expect to get any of those opposition desires that you want with one person.
So that's another way of saying to the people of Northern Ireland, in this world, you're second-class citizens. What everyone else has, the right to even have an opposition, you will never have it. You will never have the right to vote a party out of government.
But can you realistically do anything one person?
Well, I think the mandate, I think you've seen what I've done as one person. I return as a strengthened voice in Stormont, and the battle goes on to attain more in that regard. The present system is ultimately unsustainable. It one day will implode, and it will implode on the rock that if you don't have to be agreed on anything in order to be in government, the day will come when they're so disagreed in government that the thing will implode. That inevitably will happen.
Jim Allister, can I ask you about the comments on Facebook, some unfortunate social media comments by your new councillor, Jolene Bunting? Can I ask you for your reaction?
Can I ask you, when you were 18, did you ever say anything foolish?
Here. So she has your full support?
When you were 18, did you ever say anything foolish?
Well, she's an elected representative, I'm not, and there was no social media when I was 18.
You're someone who is putting out there an attempt to slur someone. I'm simply asking
I'm simply asking you whether or not you support the comments that she made.
Did you say anything foolish? That's the question. She wasn't an elected representative. She was someone barely out of school at that stage. So, come on,
so
get real.
You accept that her comments were foolish?
I think that many of us have made foolish comments at various times. If that's the best that the BBC can do, really, you're right at the bottom of the barrel.
Jim Allister, thanks very much indeed for joining us. So back to you, Mark.
Tara, thank you very much indeed. Forthright response from Jim Allister to those reported comments of Jolene Bunting, the new TUV councillor in Belfast, on Facebook a couple of years ago. Mark, maybe that just requires 20 seconds of an explainer from you just as to what Tara was talking about there.
On Facebook a few years back, it's been highlighted, not specifically by the BBC, but by a lot of people on Twitter and social media. Jolene Bunting made some derogatory comments about Catholics. I don't think I'm going to repeat them word for word, but it's out there, and that's what he's being asked to give his response to.
Yeah, and that's the allegation, and of course we haven't heard from her. We haven't had an opportunity to put that allegation to her. Perhaps we will do in the future. Edwin Putz, just a response from you on Jim Allister there, saying he's not expecting to be made the third MEP, or to be the third MEP from Northern Ireland, but he does go back to Stormont, he says, with a thumping great mandate for change.
Well, we go back with a thumping great mandate for the work that we're doing, and that is to progress Northern Ireland. It's to increase the number of job opportunities, it's to improve healthcare, it's to improve education, and those are the issues that the public will want to see us dealing with. Northern Ireland has intractable problems that we need to continue to work to resolve, so we still have the issues of flags, parades. We'll take a very clear and consistent stance on those issues to try to get a better solution for Northern Ireland and have a more peaceful environment. I was brought up in Northern Ireland throughout the Troubles. I'm glad that my children haven't had to be brought up in Northern Ireland where the news every morning on the radio was about another murder, attempted murder, bombing or shooting. Okay. That's a much better place to be.
I think if Jim Allister is returned in the manner that he describes this big vote, I think it does further damage to the reputation of the Assembly, it does damage to the political system, and I think people who didn't vote in the election last Thursday should reflect very carefully on that, because they could have had Alex Atwood in the job as MEP, supporting the institutions and giving strength to the Good Friday Agreement settlement.
And just quickly, Alban, your thoughts on Jim Allister's line there. The present system is ultimately unsustainable.
It's not unsustainable. What we need to do is to develop partnership. The system is there for partnership between Catholic and Protestant, nationalists and unionists. We have got to reach a consensus in relation to that partnership and build a new politic which will in fact be progressive and which will lead to the ultimate goal of the Good Friday Agreement, which is reconciliation between our divided people.
Of course, the truth is we could have opposition in the morning, but the SDLP and Ulster Unionists choose to sit in the executive, and then sometimes some of them want to play the game that they're not actually in the executive and want to be in opposition from within.
That's not strictly accurate, Edwin, is it? Let's be honest. There is no mechanism for a formal opposition at Stormont. They could leave the executive and they could sit on the sidelines, but they wouldn't be funded as an opposition and they wouldn't have the benefits of a formal opposition.
There would still be chairs of committees, vice chairs of committees, of all of the services that's offered to them by the committee staff.
But could I say,
a lot could be done, but they choose not to. Let's deal with this. There can be an opposition if people choose to be in opposition, but they choose to join the mandatory opposition.
With respect, what Jim Allister objects to is Sinn Féin being in government. It's not SDLP or the Ulster Unionists. It's not the fact that we're all there. He objects to Sinn Féin actually being in government.
It's part of what he objects to.
No, it's the major. It's the core objection that he has to the present system. And I believe that that's wrong, because I think we should include as many people as possible in political decision making. But we've got to make that political decision making much better and much more consensual.
It's just coming up to 5:30. You're watching our live coverage of the European election results. We're staying on air to 5:45 at least at this stage. There's Ross Brown, the Green candidate, just in the middle of our picture there a few seconds ago. That's a live picture from the Count Centre here at the King's Hall in Balmoral. Lots of people still feverishly working away towards the back in particular. A lot of calculators, a lot of tally men and women trying to work out precisely what's happening here. We're hopeful that there might be some kind of first preference declaration sooner rather than later. There's where it will happen. There's the lectern where the announcement will be made. We're ready to go. We've been ready to go for some time, it has to be said. The count is very slow. We're revising our on-air times as we speak, but certainly we're here for the next 15 minutes. We'll see if we get an announcement within that time or not. Mark Devonport's feverishly checking Twitter, checking texts and emails and talking to people on the telephone. We've even got a bit of semaphore going on here as well. Can you bring us any light as to when we might have an announcement?
The problem with this way is that you end up with your phone battery dying, and so you don't get any of these messages. But yes, we're still in the waiting game. Reflecting on that Jim Allister interview, I mean, I think that is a factor. The fact that he's sitting there outside the door of things like what we were calling the Haas talks, we've yet to come up with a good label for them, means that the DUP and those who might be involved in these negotiations have to bear in mind that there is this block of votes. And to some extent we saw in the local council elections the Ulster Unionists being rewarded for, I think, shifting to the right, even though Mike Nesbitt disputed that. But they were to some extent rewarded for that, and we see also, as Jim Allister put it, a block of maybe around 75,000 votes. That's his projection for where he'll end up, of people who are disaffected with this. So I don't think we're going to have any kind of overnight change in the Stormont system, because it leads to all sorts of other problems, and the other parties don't necessarily want to plunge directly back to direct rule. But it does affect how they do business, what deals they cut.
But they have it within their gift to change the system if they ultimately decide that that's what they want to do.
Yeah, well, if you remember back to the Ulster Unionist leadership contest when John McAllister was facing Mike Nesbitt, his position at that point was that the Ulster Unionists should simply, take their pens and briefcases and walk straight out of government with them and not worry about any kind of change to the system. And one has to suspect that if the system was to change its dormant, it may be through that kind of unilateral action, because otherwise we have this kind of circular argument which goes on where people are saying we'd like a change in the system. Will the Westminster government change the system? The Westminster government says we'll only change it if we have cross-party consensus. And nationalists who feel that this is just code for keeping Sinn Féin out of government say, don't think so.
Right. I want to just ask you about what the implications of this are for Mike Nesbitt. If Jim Nicholson is successful, but if it is the party's worst European performance ever, because he's been saying that's it, we've bottomed out, we've turned the corner, we're on the up under my leadership, we're bigger in local government than we were last time round proportionally, and this is a mandate for me and a mandate for the party to continue in the way that we are. Now, if Jim Nicholson limps over the line, how big a problem is that for Mike Nesbitt tomorrow?
It's not as big a problem as if Jim Nicholson doesn't limp over the line.
That's the first thing.
And let's be clear, that's the most important thing for him. He mustn't lose this seat, not least because the party is dependent a lot on all the finances and resources that goes with having an MEP. They're short on elected representatives. They don't have any presence at Westminster. So it takes a bit of the sheen of what was a good local election result for him. But I think he'll still try and portray it as best he can.
All right, let's hear a bit more from Tara, who's still down on the count floor.
Yes, Mark, I'm joined now by the East Belfast MP, Naomi Long, and the votes for Alliance, it does seem to be holding up.
Yeah, it more than seems to be holding up. It seems to have increased significantly since our last showing in Europe. In fact, if our tallies are correct, and that still is to be confirmed, obviously, we could actually put in a performance now that would either match or even beat the performance of Sir Oliver Napier back in 1979 and deliver us the best European election result we've ever had in our history. So there's a lot to play for from our point of view in terms of the progress we've made, even since the last European elections.
What would you put that down to?
I would put it down to a number of things. I think, first of all, our candidate. I think no one can argue that Anna Lowe was not a fabulous candidate, who really, I think, attracted people from a whole wide range of different backgrounds, who was somebody who was able to motivate people to come out and vote for her. And despite all of the bullying and despite all of the things that happened to her during the campaign, she retained her dignity and she did the job well. She argued the case for Europe very strongly, and I think she tapped into something in the Northern Ireland populace that has actually been reflected now in a really good vote for her. I'm hugely proud of what Anna has achieved in this campaign, and as I say, it could well turn out to be the best result we've ever had.
Were there jitters, though, within the party on her comments on the constitutional question?
No, there weren't, because we know Anna. We've known Anna all along. We're very confident and comfortable with our position as a cross-community party. You simply can't be credibly cross-community if everyone is a closet unionist. That's not how we operate. There are people from a wide range of different backgrounds in the party, and they're free to talk about that, but it's not their motivating factor, and it's not our focus as a party. It's not Anna's focus as an individual either, and I think the public respected her for her honesty, but at the same time respected her for the fact that she's committed to building a shared future, and a shared future in Europe.
Very briefly, I just want to ask you about the transfers and where they're likely to go. Do you think you will be, the Alliance Party will be helping Jim Nicholson over that line we were talking about there?
Well, I think it's quite possible at this stage. Jim looks in quite a tight spot. As I say, it's still early. We'll find the final figures and we'll be able to make a better judgment. But if he does find himself in that tight spot, I suspect that our transfers are most likely to go to people like Alex Atwood and Jim Nicholson rather than the other candidates. And it may just be enough to help Jim across the line.
Naomi, thanks very much indeed. And that's back to you, Mark.
Thanks very much, Tara. We're here for another 10 minutes or thereabouts, 8, maybe it's 9 minutes till 5:45. We'll see if we're back after that. Still no sign of a result. Lots of chatter. I think the volume has gone up on the floor, hasn't it, Edmund? Do you think
we're nearly there.
You think we're nearly there? Well, are you just saying that out of desperation, or is that based on...
No, the last figures I got was something like Sinn Féin being 159,000, and the Ulster Unionists actually stretched ahead of Jim Allister. It was 84,000 to 73,000, so I think we're getting close to the finishing line, and I think that the good staff who are working very hard counting all of these votes, and we need to demonstrate our appreciation for them, will be relieved to see that part of it over.
Yes. Although, just to be absolutely clear, Oban, when we get the first preferences, it doesn't necessarily mean that is the... if Martina Anderson tops the poll and if she clears the quota, she's deemed elected. But there's still a process to be gone beyond that, and she might not reach the quota, in which case the process is even longer.
It looks likely that she
will.
has already reached the quota. I think the quota is around about 155,000.
Right, well, she's just there then, maybe, yes.
Yeah. So but that's what, 4,000 votes over, and of course they have to be dealt with as well.
Yeah, but just for the benefit of people watching at home, what we're not going to get is an announcement, here are the 3 MEPs all done and dusted.
What will happen is potentially a redistribution of the surplus votes that Martina Anderson has, or alternatively an elimination of some of the people at the bottom, and probably both things will happen during the course of what's looking like a long evening.
So it could bring the midnight oil again.
Oh, well, and Edwin, there, I mean, some people are saying, and again, I mean, I hope I can smile and say this is not going to happen, that it could run into tomorrow. Now, the Belfast City count got complicated on Saturday night and ran well into the early hours of Sunday morning, and that was a first. So we've seen how slow the process has been across the water and down in Dublin where there are recounts. So, you know, it's not over till it's over.
The further you get into the process, it's not the counters that count the votes that will delay it. It'll actually be whenever you break down fractions of percentages that someone has received and to transfer them elsewhere. It takes time for others, just 2 or 3 people, to work that out.
What happens is that when somebody is eliminated, then basically if they put a transfer, that vote goes as it is. But when you've got a surplus, because you can't take the slab off the top, you don't sort of take just the 4,000 votes that happen to be left over. You instead have to go through the whole of a candidate's votes and work out in percentage to their surplus, and this is why you get to these percentage figures. So it's confusing for people because they sometimes think, how can you have 0.2 of a vote? Well, it's because you've had to do a mathematical
because
equation.
the votes are transferred at a reduced value, which is the critical point. So somebody was just, I mean, I've had quite a few, and I'm sorry that I can't reply on Twitter to all of them. Somebody was saying, who decides where the transfers go? Well, the answer is you decide where the transfers go. The voter decides. That's why you express your preference 1, 2, 3, 4, and whatever beyond that. You decide where your transfer goes to. But the point is the people behind us are the ones who have to go through the paper to work out what it is that you've expressed.
Some voters will, you know, some Martina Anderson's voters may have transferred to Alex Atwell, but some have plumped, which is the jargon for simply putting down your Sinn Féin candidate or your DUP candidate or whoever, and somebody's got to go through all the pieces of paper, work out who's done what, and then try and sort out the maths from there.
Okay,
there's a lot of spoilt votes out there today as well, and quite a lot of people seem to have went and put 1 in the council election and then 2, 3, 4 in this election, and those votes don't have any value.
Right. Well, that's silly, isn't it? I mean, has that not been explained well enough to people?
Well, it should be, because they're 2 separate ballot papers, and people should understand that.
Just an update, just hearing from my colleagues, I need to put my glasses on to read the note I've just written. 159, speculation, Martina Anderson's figure is 159,000, which is over the quota.
That's roughly 4,000 over the quota.
Yeah, so we think that the quota is about 155,000, isn't that right? So that's speculation. If that's correct, Mark, that means that on the first count, she would be elected.
She would be deemed elected on this first
So
count.
then there are 4,000, there's a surplus of 4,000 which needs to be redistributed.
Although, and to do that you would have to, well...
Not necessarily. if the lowest candidate is more than 4,000 votes behind the next lowest candidate, then they'll be eliminated.
So you can have a process of elimination before.
Probably do both at the one time.
Yes.
And if the 2 lowest candidates were below the, which I think they will be, below the 3rd candidate.
Now, Edwin, just when I thought I was explaining it quite well, you've complicated it further. So you've a double system going on. You're redistributing at the top and you're eliminating at the bottom.
Yeah, may not redistribute the top unless it makes a real difference.
Well, one other little thing that the returning officer will take into account as well will not only be whether votes will help somebody to get elected, but also whether at the bottom any kind of counting or elimination will help somebody to actually retain their deposit. That is another factor, is it?
You can understand the frustration of people at home, and I noticed someone had tweeted me there saying, I have a mobile phone with an app on it where I can control my heating at home from anywhere in the world. Why can't we have electronic voting?
Well, of course, this happened very famously in the south, and I remember going down, I'm trying to remember the constituency, you may remember it better than me, but I went down to cover that at the time, and they had all these great machines where you put in your vote and it all went in electronically. Now, they made a couple of errors with that. One was that they brought all the candidates out and didn't tell them in advance what would happen, and they just hit the button on the computer, and then they suddenly said, within seconds, by the way, you and you are eliminated, you're elected. It was very, very quick, but it was also rather brutal. So I think if they were to adopt that, one thing you'd have to do is give the candidates a bit of warning, because they were literally being executed in front of our very eyes on the TV cameras. But also the other thing is that you still probably need a paper trail, because if you then have a disgruntled candidate, Edwin Poots thinks that he should have got more, and you tell him, well, the numbers are all in this computer chip. Well, he might not necessarily trust you on that. You must have the option to go back to paper eventually.
Yeah, cunning plan.
We just saw some pictures of, I think it was Sinn Féin politicians taking pictures of each other. Michelle O'Neill was in the middle of it. Michelle O'Neill, Paul Maskey. So there you go. Lots of politicians taking lots of photographs and tweeting pictures. They're now looking at their photographs. I wonder if they know we're talking about them.
Yeah, I think they're being phoned to tell
Conor Murphy as well.
Look serious, because they're on the telly.
Is that? No, it's not Francie.
No, that's Michelle O'Neill. Yeah.
Yeah. Now I can tell you, there's Diane Dods with Jonathan Bell. We'll see if she makes her way towards Tara, and maybe Tara can grab a word with her, because she has the advantage of being down there on the floor. And it's Bobby Hanvey taking another photograph. I can tell you the update, gentlemen. It's 5:45. We're here until 6:15. So it's a moving target. We're chasing in more ways than one, Mark. Chasing a moving target.
We're on a single transferable programme at the moment, I think.
It looks a bit like we are, but you know, where would you get it for the money?
There's no escape for us, guys.
And people on Twitter are now saying that we deserve a fish supper, not just a cup of tea.
Something to eat would be good, wouldn't it? Right, Tara, I don't know if she's had anything to eat, but she's had plenty of people to talk to, and she's got somebody else now who's prepared to have a word in front of her camera. Tara, who have you got?
Yes, I have Diane Dods here with me, and can I just ask you first of all what level of support you think you've got? Have you got a tally figure for us?
Well, we're delighted with the level of support, very, very strong support right across Northern Ireland. We have had a good campaign, a campaign where we were in every part of Northern Ireland, and the support has been tremendous. That support has held up. We've had a good election.
You're starting from a low base the last time. What do you put that increase in support to you down to?
Well, I have spent the last 5 years working very, very hard right across Northern Ireland on the issues that matter to people, you know, to our businesses, to our farmers, our fishermen, and to local communities. And that support has paid off, and we have worked hard at it, and I look forward to now. I think that we're going to have the first preference announcement reasonably soon.
When it comes down to support then, a bit of a drop for the DUP in the council elections, but a good boost for you in the Euro election.
Well, a good boost for the party.
And they've got flowers and everything for you here, Diane.
Asked me to present this book of flowers to you. Congratulations for a job well done. And it's good for the heart and half.
There you are, Diane Dodds being presented with a bouquet of flowers by the DUP MP, William McCrae. You can hear the cheering. You can maybe still see some of it, I think, over my shoulder. There's somebody waving a union flag. Well, we'll just take a look at those pictures. There you are, Diane Dodds looks happy, but of course she hasn't actually won the seat yet. There's Nigel Dodds, her husband, who was one of our studio guests a short time ago, and he said that he thought she'd had a good campaign, and she was very pleased with how things had gone, and she was very confident that she would be returned with maybe a better set of figures than she had the last time round. And slightly precipitative, maybe, on the part of William McCrae, giving her the flowers, Edwin Poots.
That's the soft side of the DUP. We're not so...
Noisy side of the DUP.
The noisy side as well. We're not soft in our negotiations, but we have some compassion, and
I have
the soft side of the DUP.
I have a suspicion they heard the TUV making all that noise just previously, and they thought that we can make just an exact same bit of noise. So
yeah, well, it was certainly it worked. It was noisy, and we were absolutely aware that it was happening. Now,
we're getting singing as well.
Singing now.
Edwin, how do you feel about the... Now you're smiling, but are you entirely comfortable with that?
Oh, they're sounding good, so they are.
Just about, Alban, just about the only party that engages in that sort of performance.
Yeah, well, I suppose they're entitled to enjoy themselves on the cusp of victory. But perhaps it could be a little less noisy, a little less intrusive.
It's quite hard for us to hear up here, actually, isn't it?
Somebody on Twitter was joking that the flowers must be from a garden centre unionist. So.
Really? Yeah, somebody was asking about the reference to garden centre Catholics that you made. It goes back to the reference to garden centre unionists deserting David Trimble.
Yeah, they talked about garden centre Protestants was the phrase I think that David Trimble used to use. Those that he thought that he wanted to get out, that he had got out for the Good Friday Agreement but couldn't get out for all those succeeding elections.
Yes, it was a clever little bit of political footwork by you, which confused some of our viewers, I think. I thought it was very good.
There are a lot of Catholics out there who don't feel that they have a voting option because they don't feel that either the SDLP or Sinn Féin reflect their moral views, nor do they reflect their views on education. And that is a problem for both parties because both parties are against academic selection and both parties made decisions in the Assembly over the course of the last number of months and years which would put a divergence
and of course they're
between
not
themselves
comfortable
and the
about
church.
voting for the DUP. Alban, do you accept that? Is that a fair criticism?
Well, I don't think, first of all, that they would move or shift to the DUP or indeed the Ulster Unionist Party on that basis. But it is an issue which has come up on the doorstep. There's no doubt about that, particularly in relation to abortion. But of course, the SDLP is very clear on that, 100% against abortion. We are opposed to the extension 1967 Abortion Act to Northern Ireland. And that has been a fundamental position of the party, so people don't have anything to worry about in relation to the abortion issue.
Although, of course, Bishop Trainor's letter also referred to the issue of same-sex marriage, where
he did,
your party policy does differ from church policy. Do you think that you're at all vulnerable there, that if Fianna Fáil has been making noises about coming north, could you be attacked by a sort of traditionalist Catholic moral values party?
I think what's possible is that people in that position may say, well, we have nobody to vote for and opt out of voting. I think that we've got to persuade them that in fact that position is not true, that we are against abortion, and on the whole issue of gay marriage, that we allow conscientious objection.
Well, one of whom is you, of course.
Yes, indeed, yes.
Okay, I just see that Tara has moved down towards this end of the hall and she's managed to have a word with Martina Anderson, and I think we can cross over to her now and hopefully hear what the candidate who's expected to top the poll has to say at this stage. Tara.
Yes, we're expecting some more singing and maybe some dancing next, who knows. Martina Anderson, how pleased are you with the result?
Absolutely delighted. I'm really honoured at the number of people who have voted for myself and for Sinn Féin. This is a truly historic day for our party. I have just been off the phone to Lynn Boylan, who was elected MEP in Dublin last night, and we're waiting on Matt Carty also to be elected, and we have Leah Nerida also coming. So the lonely road to Brussels will have ended for myself. This is a great opportunity for all of us to collectively work together to stand up for the people of Ireland.
You topped the poll. Can you tell us the figure? Have you got a final figure?
Well, I haven't actually got the final figure, but I believe it is somewhere in the region of 159,000 votes.
And that would have you reaching the quota, so you will get elected too?
That is my understanding.
What do you put that down to, Martina?
Hard work. I put it down to support for Sinn Féin's contribution to the peace process. I also think the people have spoken, and they have spoken in large numbers. And they also recognise that we are about creating a society of fairness, equality across Ireland, not just here in the north. And they realise that Team Sinn Féin, that we are the largest party now, the largest party in terms of republicanism across this island, with 258 councillors potentially 4 MEPs, and we're just waiting on our party president, who has travelled the length and breadth of Ireland over the last 2 days to appear at all accounts.
Okay, Martina Anderson, thanks very much. I'll let you go and get the declaration. Thank you.
Thank you.
For now, back to Mark.
All right, Tara, thanks very much indeed. Now we've had a bit of a reshuffle up here on our election set. Edwin Putz has stayed with us, and he's getting lots of facts and figures, which he's going to share with us in just a moment or two, I hope. Mark Davenport's still here, but Michelle Gildernew from Sinn Féin is with us. Edwin looks like he's looking for a shortcut over the balcony.
Shall I run through the figures that I have to thank Edwin and DUP sources for? But
okay.
Or do you want to read it?
Okay. Let's listen to this, Michelle, and then we'll get your thoughts on where we are.
It's just updating the last one. We haven't got the percentages. These are just raw figures, but obviously the count's further forward. So Sinn Féin on 159,000. So that's 4,000 ahead of what we think is the quota. That will mean that Martina Anderson will be deemed elected whenever we get this announcement. Then behind them, Diane Dods on 131,000. So that's obviously much larger number than she got before when she was on 18% of the vote. So she's probably up nearer like 22% or something of the vote. Anyway, and then let's see, the Ulster Unionists have pulled back into third position with 83,000 votes, just ahead of the SDLP on 81,000 votes, and the TUV, as we were hearing from Jim Allister, then coming in with 75,000 votes. And then there's a big gap then with Alliance on 44,000 votes, UKIP's Henry Riley on 24,000 votes, and then 10,000 apiece to the Greens and to NI21. So on those figures, with the Ulster Unionists pulling ahead of the SDLP, I think it's probably the case that they will get that third seat, although we will probably need to go through quite a few stages of eliminations and transfers before we actually get there.
Do you agree with that, Edwin?
Yeah, it will be. We will have to distribute the surplus of Martina Anderson because you have the two 10,000s, and that'll bring things too close together. So that'll slow the process down further, because it's easier to obviously count 10,000 votes than it is to count 160,000 and work out things.
Yeah, where do you think those transfers are going to go? Have you any thought?
Well, the 4,000 Sinn Féin votes will probably go mostly to SDLP
or not anywhere.
Or not anywhere, yes.
And then in terms of
the two 10,000s.
The two 10,000s, they're the Greens in NI21. Well, they could benefit Anna Lowe in Alliance, or they might possibly, some of them might head towards the SDLP or the Ulster Unionists, but it won't make much difference, I suspect.
At Council, NI21 were going everywhere at the council elections.
Yeah.
And interesting enough, UKIP actually helped to take seats away from Unionists, and NI21 gained one in Lisburn, and a number of other seats were lost as a result of UKIP's intervention in other areas.
Okay. Just want to hear from Michelle. I gather that your party president might be arriving shortly. If that's the case, forgive us if we cut across to see his arrival, because we've been doing that with the other parties. Party leaders as they've been coming in. What do you make of the figures so far? Martina Anderson, obviously not confirmed, but if she's on 159 and she's 4 clear of the quota, that's a good day's work from her perspective.
Absolutely, it's an amazing result for Martina Anderson personally. It's an amazing result from the party. Look at that across the island of Ireland, and the thousands upon thousands of people who've come out and voted for Sinn Féin over the past number of days. We're looking at a situation Lynn Boylan's already in, Leah Nereida is doing very well in the south, and Matt Carthy in Midland. So an excellent day for Sinn Féin, and we want to thank everybody who worked for us, everybody who voted for us, everybody who had faith in Sinn Féin, in our politics, in our manifestos, and in ensuring that we've over 250 councillors across the island of Ireland.
And where do you think, Michelle, where do you think those 4,000 transfers, potential transfers, will go? Will there be any of note? Because of course we've had the conversation with Gerry Adams, no confidence in the SDLP, not keen for voters to transfer from Sinn Féin to the SDLP, though Barry McElduff told me he personally had transferred to the SDLP. Did you?
I'm not saying what it did in the polling station.
Barry was quite happy too.
Well, I'd prefer not to. No, I didn't vote for the DUP.
Well,
I voted for Sinn Féin.
So you might have deviated from your party position.
No, I think I would say a lot of those transfers, the majority of them will go, if they're going anywhere, they'll go to the SDLP,
right.
But many of them will be non-transferable. So, you know, I'm just delighted that Martina's over the line, has reached the quota.
And then how do you see it shaping up beyond that? Clearly Diane Dods is going to take a seat, the second seat. The third seat going to go for Jim Nicholson, pretty obviously, isn't it?
I think Jim Nicholson has edged it, you know. I certainly think that he's probably the one most likely, because once Martina's surplus is transferred, then we're going to be looking at eliminations and NI21 and the Greens, and then on to Alliance. So it's...
I've actually had a look at the figures there, and I think that the quota will actually be closer to 159,000, so there won't really be a surplus to distribute if that's the case.
Okay, right, okay. And what about that solid vote, if it turns out to be the case, of 75,000 or thereabouts for Jim Allister and the TUV, who stand implacably opposed to everything that you represent? You got 159,000, you're a huge party with huge range. He's one man, 13 councillors, and he gets 75,000 votes. You can't just wish that away. Do you accept that?
Well, we can't, absolutely not. And we've said consistently, we'll work. I mean, Jim Allister's in the Assembly. I was on the Employment and Learning Committee with him. We work with people from all political persuasions. If Jim Allister, he has a big vote, that brings a big, to use a well-worn cliche, a big responsibility, and we have to move forward. We want to see leadership, and we want to see positive leadership, and what we fail to see, especially over the past couple of years, there's been a disgraceful lack of leadership from unionism.
But he says his mandate, of course, is a thumping mandate not to cooperate with Sinn Féin.
Is it a thumping mandate to use people in the way in which loyalist working class communities have been used, and to turn their back on them when it comes to the needs that those people have? I don't think so. Jim Allister needs to think very seriously about the responsibility that mandate leaves him with, and I think he needs to look at his position in politics in Ireland.
Of course,
there comes. Sorry, Edwin. I just want to talk over these pictures here. Jerry Adams is just arriving at the Count Centre. Just immediately behind me to my left, accompanying there the candidate Martina Anderson, of course, who's all smiles, and Martin McGuinness is there as well. There are several journalists, well, lots of journalists, and lots of other Sinn Féin party members. Paul Maskey there, the MP for West Belfast, just behind Jerry Adams. And he, like everybody else, has to go through the process of picking up his wristband. There he is, providing his ID. Don't suppose anybody's going
British
to dispute
passport.
Who he is.
Getting that?
Do you think his form of ID is Michelle? He's not going to produce a Visa card, is he? Because that will not do. It has to be photo ID.
Is there Octus ID?
It looks like it's
maybe a senior smart pass card.
Photo ID back in his wallet, and he'll be given a wristband which will be applied just like the rest of us. What colour is yours? Pink?
I don't have one.
You don't have one? You shouldn't be here.
Pretty and pink.
How did you get in without a wristband?
Oh, this is my ID.
Maybe investigation carried out.
Well, I think. Anyway, Jerry Adams is coming in. I think actually we're going to hear from Jerry Adams. Tara has caught up with him. Let's hear what he has to say. Tara.
Okay, joined now by Jerry Adams. What's your reaction to Martina Anderson's support today?
Well, it's an amazing performance, and I want to thank all of the people who voted for us. We have had a raft of candidates both at local level across the island of Ireland. We're poised to win 4 MEP seats. I want to thank all of those people, our candidates and their families, and we will use the mandate we've been given wisely to advance the peace process here, but also to do all that we can locally and at Europe to bring forward progressive policies which are about taking the burden of poverty, of a lack of access to education, of decent housing. There's jobs needed right across Ireland, so that's what Martina will be doing, and she'll represent every citizen here. She won't just represent the people who voted for her.
And big developments south of the border today.
Yes, Martin was there as well. We were in Mayo last night. Matt Carthy is poised to win that seat. I just left Cork a few hours ago, and Lynn Ní Riada will be elected there as well. Gumleska Leah Ní Riada will be elected there, and Lynn Boylan was elected, of course, last night. And we have the largest number. We trebled our representation in local government. in the south. So it's a good day for Sinn Féin, but I also think it's a good day for the people of the island, that we will now hopefully have more discussion, more conversation, more debate about citizens' rights, about a united Ireland, about the peace process, about the future, as opposed to sometimes what goes on where people harking back to the old arguments. And most people, we don't want to forget the past. We're very, very conscious of that. We commemorate as well as everybody else, but we need to live in the future. It
looks as though, given the results in the Republic, that your arrest didn't harm your electoral support.
Well, we don't know that. You know, we can't measure that. There may be people who are going to come and vote for Sinn Féin who haven't. What we do know is that it did galvanise our own activists. I mean, they were fighting a very tight campaign, but they sort of got a new burst of energy when I was arrested, because they were affronted by that. And also I found it very gratifying, the number of people who were pleased to see me as I was going about the place, that they were relieved and glad that I was released again. So that was, at a personal level, that was good.
What about Eamon Gilmore's decision to resign today?
Well, it's a tough business, and you know, I would commiserate with Eamon and his family, but you know, it isn't about personalities, it's about policy. And you know, the crisis for the government in Dublin, that's what it's about. It's about policy. And
but you're not sorry to see him go, are you?
Well, that's up to the Labour Party who they choose to represent them. I think the government should go. The fact is, some of those who called for his dismissal and who voted no confidence in him voted to be in government and voted for all of these policies that they're now blaming him in. You know, you can only be, I'm a leader of the party, but Martina's my leader. You know, Martin's my leader. You know, we're a collective leadership, and the Labour Party are the party who the Irish people said they had no confidence in.
Gerry Adams, thanks very much.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay, Tara, thanks very much indeed. Gerry Adams, the Sinn Féin president, just arrived at the County Centre. Martina Anderson was talking to Tara a short time ago, very pleased at what looks like 159,000 votes. She should be just about ahead of the quota. We thought maybe 4,000 clear. Edwin Putz tells us the latest figures they've got might make it a little bit closer than that. Edwin, can I just pick up on a point that Michelle was making earlier there about the all-island success of Sinn Féin? 250 plus councillors, a few MEPs. How nervous does that make unionists to see Sinn Féin doing so well north and south of the border?
Well, what happens south of the border happens south of the border. We're, of course, a part of the United Kingdom, and we look to Westminster, we look to our national government. That's where a lot of the big decisions are made. Decisions about foreign policy, decisions about taxation, fiscal policies, and all of that there. And we will work closely with our neighbours, whoever our neighbours happen to elect. And at this moment in time, it's Fine Gael Labour that we're working with. And whatever government happens to be in the Republic of Ireland, we will work with them as neighbours.
Yeah. Does it change the landscape, though? I mean, Sinn Féin now is a much more significant political force than it was Wednesday of last week?
I think it would change the landscape in that it would harden opinion, that they would be less inclined, and more people would be less inclined to go for a united Ireland because they see how Sinn Féin operate in Northern Ireland. We hear Gerry Adams complaining bitterly about being arrested for a couple of days.
Well, does it make the job?
Any thought whatsoever for Jean McConville and her,
here's
and
the question:
family?
does it make the job of unionist politicians like yourself? You're in government, you're in the executive in Northern Ireland. Does it make your job more difficult?
No, it doesn't, because we're absolutely solid and firm in what we are and where we are, and we're part of the United Kingdom, serving in a devolved administration, which is part of the United Kingdom government. And as a result of that, we will carry on the work that we have to do until people vote to do otherwise, and the strengthening of the Sinn Féin vote in the Republic of Ireland will actually discourage more people to go into United Ireland.
Okay, I'll come to Michelle. Do you mind just give me 1 second, because I think I want to get a little bit of an update from Tara, who's down on the count floor.
Okay, Mark, and I'm joined now by the SDLP leader. What are you hearing from the count so far?
I'm hearing that the votes are not finalised yet, but their suggestions are that they're getting towards it, and the suggestion is that Martina Anderson will probably be the top of the lead in the polls. Nobody may reach the quota on the first count. We're relatively satisfied with what we're getting back. We had 86,000 votes in the local government. We're going to get something similar to that. we'll get transfers, and our vote, that's on the basis of 79,000, I think, in the last European election. So, okay, the turnout is up a bit. We're up a bit. We hope to be up 5,000-6,000 votes.
But it's still staying at around 12%. Is that right?
We're still around. We'll be around the 13% or 13.5%. And you know, we're in there at the finish. A lot depends on transfers. People are trying to interpret transfers or what transfers might be, but it's hard enough to interpret first preferences but the transfers, you've no idea how they will just fall exactly. It's very much a guessing game.
Has this election, both the council elections and this European one, left the SDLP bruised?
No. We set out to renew the party. I set out 2.5 years ago to renew the party. I've done that. I've brought forward a whole swathe of new councillors. We had massive numbers of retirements of councillors that weren't going forward for election. Some resigned and were co-opted. People had co-opted in their place. Some are going through to next year. We had 60 new candidates out of 120, and of that we have, I think, some 26 women out of the 66, which is 40%, the highest percentage of any party, and we also have about 40% of our new candidates come through. So
we'll have to leave it there.
We're very pleased with the result.
Okay.
It's not as good as we'd like, but you never get for as much as you like.
Okay. Some parties do, others do. Thanks very much. Back to you, Mark.
Tara, thank you very much. Alistair MacDonald saying you never get as much as you would like.
Yeah, well,
some parties do, as Tara just pointed out.
Exactly.
Some parties get more than they would like.
Yeah, and obviously Sinn Féin were demonstrating there, coming in, they're on a bit of a high at the moment. So, and the DUP as well with their bouquets and their songs.
Yeah, I want to go to Michelle Gildernew just to pick up on the conversation we were having. Edwin Putz was telling us that unionists have nothing to fear from the all-island success of Sinn Féin north and south of the border. How sensitive are you going to be to that? And Martin McGuinness sat in that seat earlier and talked to Mike Nesbitt about the need to reach out and try and build a shared future and that sort of thing. But you can understand unionists, while maybe not publicly, privately, being a little bit nervous.
Well, I certainly think, given that I get unionist votes in my constituency, I don't get that sense of nervousness. And I thought I'd like to take exception, I suppose, to some of the things that Edwin said. First of all, he said it doesn't really matter what they do down south, but he's meeting James Riley, the Health Minister in the south, on a regular basis in the North-South Ministerial Council. Conceivably, and looking at the votes there, it won't be very long until Sinn Féin are in government in the south as well at some stage. So he
Is that now inevitable?
Well, I'm not going to preempt anything, and we certainly don't take the electorate for granted. But I think on the basis of this election, we'd be very buoyant looking at the elections over the next coming years and looking at how we can help to deliver on our electoral promises for the people of the south. Because don't forget, people who have most been targeted by anti-austerity are those who have least to give. And people in the south, like people in the north, are very upset at how policies and politicians across this island have treated them with disdain a lot of the time.
Just very quickly, if you would, is it your confident prediction that Alex Attwood, the SDLP candidate just arriving there and again signing in, getting his accreditation and his wristband, perhaps we'll hear from him sooner rather than later? I just wanted to ask you very quickly, sorry, is it inevitable that Sinn Féin will be in government north and south in 2016? Sinn
Féin don't take anything for granted, Mark. What is inevitable is that Sinn Féin will use their mandate wisely. We'll work very hard.
Okay.
Council, Assembly, Westminster, Europe.
Edwin, Sinn Féin in government, the prospect of that in 2016 in Dublin and in Belfast, does that put the frighteners on you?
No. We will work with whoever we have to work with. We will progress things in Northern Ireland for the best interests of Northern Ireland. And as I say, we look to our national government at Westminster. Sinn Féin are operating a system in the United Kingdom. They've chosen to do that. That's something that we would welcome because it's much better than what the previous case was, and that was engaged in violence.
Okay, Mark, we've just over a minute left on air at this stage in what has been a movable feast. We've a pretty clear picture of what we think is going to happen, but we don't have a formal announcement, and we're unlikely to have that by the time we go off air. Where are we, do you think?
Well, I think it's going to be no change in terms of the MEPs that we're returning. It'll be Sinn Féin topping the poll, followed by the DUP, probably the Ulster Unionists coming through. But Jim Allister able to say that there's a significant constituency out there, and that's something that I think the unionists will be looking over their shoulders at more than Sinn Féin needs to look over its shoulders at the SDLP, even though the SDLP has maybe got a little bit more credit as the count went on. They amassed a few more votes, but they're still not in contention, I think.
And just briefly, when you and I head up to Stormont tomorrow afternoon, as we will do, what does all of this, the activity over the past 3-4 days, mean for what happens in the chamber?
Well, I think a bit of number crunching will go on, and there's an opportunity potentially to move, once you've got the election out of the way, on issues related to flags parades, the past and welfare reform, but a bit of number crunching needed by the politicians as to whether they will make those compromises or whether they think it's a bad idea.
All right, okay, we will leave it there. Thank you all very much indeed. Special thanks to Mark Davenport, who's been very busy and much appreciated over the past 4 hours. That's it for now from our election coverage here on the King's Hall Newsline. BBC Newsline at 10 to 7 will have the latest. You can keep up to date with all the latest news and reaction on Radio Ulster and BBC News Online. That's at bbc.co.uk/newsni. For now, from all of us, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.